All right, welcome back, guys. Today I have a guest. We're going to do something a little bit different than what we've been doing on YouTube and the podcast. And we're going to start doing some coaching on the podcast itself. And Evan has been my first volunteer to get coached. We just met. So I'm going to get some background on Evan. But Evan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Evan Whitehead, and I am a middle-aged man in 2024, and I have been diagnosed with ADHD actually as an adult. I was not diagnosed as a child. However, in retrospect, and after obviously working with my physicians and medical professionals, understanding and realizing that I definitely were distributing traits of ADHD that time, specifically then the younger impulsivity, hyperactivity,
Mhm.
um, and challenges with executive functioning. Imagine that. So I just remember growing up. My room was always a mess, like a tornado ran through it. My desk in school was a mess.
Yeah.
Um, as I got older and went through school, my locker was always a mess. I was always forgetting homework, not doing homework, those type of things. And the reality was, during that whole time, I was always in gifted and talented programs and always in advanced placement class and honors. So because it didn't have an educational impact on me, I it would have never been flagged, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, one of the criteria for being diagnosed with ADHD is actually above average intelligence.
Mhm.
Because oftentimes, in order to create certain accommodations for yourself, right, to kind of go in a loop or non-linear way of thinking and doing things, you have to figure it out. And really, to do that, it's pretty takes a lot. So when I was diagnosed, it was actually happened, as I said, as though I was probably approaching 40. And, my background is in education. And ironically, my undergrad is in special education.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yes, and my master's degree is in ed leadership and administration. And then also working with other at-risk programs for students, slow learners, working with students, especially like young students in early childhood programs for students that are at risk for failure in kindergarten. So it's been my wheelhouse. Ironically, though, even though I explained some of my background to you and also what I do, I myself didn't think that I had ADHD. It was one of those things that kind of went over my head. Like I missed the boat, and I'm the one that actually, approves evaluations and also
Mm.
and works with families to work with them to understand the needs of their child. And specifically, what I know is that working with families, especially families of color, around ADHD and what that means, and medication versus non-medication, and helping them to navigate a lot of things, and understanding that I felt I was pretty good about identifying, but obviously sometimes, from the outside, it would appear that there would have been something else going on. But all the effects that you and I both know in terms of ADHD were manifesting now as me an adult, right? I was feeling that I was, depressed, and my self esteem was
Mhm.
low, finish projects on time, and so things such as times, times tables and math facts,
Mhm.
um, challenging for me because they were timed. So now I have additional pressure, so all those things that I remember as a young child started to brew again. And then that's when I was like, something's going on. Let me check what it is. And then I went to the doctor. My doctor asked, have you ever thought about, you may have ADHD? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't have ADHD. And she's like, are you? She went through, obviously, I knew what she was going to do, and she did it. And she asked me the questions and she said, so what is it that you do again? And I told her. So now I'm feeling a little shameful again and embarrassed. And because now
I should have known.
I should have known, but she said was refreshing. And then that went to another piece that's refreshing, and I'm sure with a lot of clients that you work with, was that she said, you must be a really, really, really intelligent guy
Mhm.
because your ADHD is so severe that there's no way that you should have made it to where you are professionally and
Right.
academically. given the severity of your ADHD. And so that's what kind of made me feel the situation of, wow, right? And then once she told me, and then I went for further assessment diagnosis, it was like a light bulb came over my head. Like, oh my God, this is what it is. The whole time, people were telling me that I was lazy, right? I didn't want to put the effort in. Like,
Yeah.
those, because it really helps, especially once I started, for me, using medication. That was extremely helpful. It was like it helped along with the therapy and coaching. It really helped get to a place where I needed to go. So
Yeah. You
that's just
mentioned a dual diagnosis earlier. What was the dual diagnosis?
unfortunately, like the ADHD was the first um, mental illness diagnosis that I had, right? That was diagnosed. However, there were other things that were undiagnosed, but because I had grown up in a sense of being resilient, just push through, you got to make it, right? As I climbed up the professional ladder, as I said, right, the obstacles and challenges got more difficult and more difficult. Even after I was diagnosed with ADHD, I still went to take on a higher job with more responsibility, and everything was just kind of going at a pace. So because of that, I also, because I had some undiagnosed trauma and things, I realized I was self-medicating. And that's when it broke, and then I entered a treatment program for dual diagnosis for substance abuse and also for mental illness. And I was diagnosed finally, aside from my ADHD, what I went in with, I was also diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and
Mhm.
also
Very
um,
common. Yes.
yeah, I mean, right, because they exist. They're like
Mhm.
opposite ends of the same coin, and they manifest differently, especially in men. Oftentimes depression looks like anger, and those type of things. And so the other part is that I also was diagnosed with some PTSD, which made sense. But it wasn't, at the time I was in crisis. So there were some things that weren't necessarily addressed. It was working on me to be stable. And there were three themes that consistently came up while I was in treatment. The first one was balance. Okay. And what I realized was that I was an extremist. It was all or nothing. And everything that I,
Mhm.
whether it was something that was positive, right? Or whether it was something that was non-sustainable and wasn't healthy. And so, that's also, as you know, part of the ADHD is the hyper focus and the attention of preferred activities. So things that I was really into, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be the best I'm going to do it. However, I didn't understand the like middle path, and understand that, like, you don't have to do that. And the other thing that I learned to understand is that, reality or myth of work-life balance does not exist, because that's not life, right? My life was moving at the speed of light, and
It sounds
everything
like
that
it was a lot of achievement.
I achievement, trying to overachieve,
Mhm.
compensating. This from the time that I graduated high school until I finished my undergrad degree, it was 10 years. So now I have a gap that I feel I have to make up, and I'm comparing myself to others. I had enough sick days and vacation that was banked that I was able to be on FMLA for 3 months, go to treatment.
FMLA, can you tell us more?
So FMLA is Family Medical Leave Act.
Okay.
So you hold on to your job, but you don't get paid, right? So you don't lose your job when you're sick, or like, your spouse, or, you can have maternity leave or paternity leave. It allows you to hold on to your job, and it's protected by the federal government and Labor Act.
Okay.
Well, I had so many days of vacation and sick days that I was able to do that and still get paid my salary because I banked it. That's
Nice.
how that's a lot of not taking care of yourself and doing things, because as an administrator, you get 20 vacation days a year, right? Well, you never have time to take 20 vacation days. That's a lot. That's
Right.
you know that's 4 weeks of vacation. So what happens is you can only carry over so many, so you have to burn them out and kind of get rid of some. But the other part is they just carry over. So now I'm carrying over at least 10 for every year, but now I'm getting another 20. So every time I do it, it's accumulating. So the breaks are important. And what I realized, I never took the chance to pause.
What made you raise your hand for coaching today?
Well, I think one, I saw what you posted and I said, let me look at some interest in that. I've never had a specific ADHD coach.
Mhm.
I've worked with therapists and counselors that, they say they work with people with ADHD, but never specifically. And
Right.
because, just where I am in terms of a life situation now, things have changed and I have some flexibility in my life. And I'm also moving into working as a full-time consultant and coach and doing keynote speaking. I want to see how I can maximize my time in
Okay.
terms of and effectively. And also the other part is begin to um, continue to work on and building on the skills I need in reducing the medication that I'm taking, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so
How
I,
are you currently managing your time?
so right now, so I, what I do, I have a calendar and I, also make sure that I build in transitions typically from one
Mhm.
thing to realized it was very important to do so. And then I also, keep a similar work schedule, even though I'm working from home, as if I were, not working. So I want to make sure that if I'm not going to schedule something too soon, I'm not going to schedule something too late. I want to keep things going, but I also build in breaks during the day for me to do that. So when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do, I'll meditate. And also, if I need to do that during the day, I'll take breaks to do that as well. I make sure that I continue my physical work, and I walk 3 to 6 miles a day, and I build it into my schedule. But knowing that I have a flexible schedule and I'm not a 9 to 5, I can do that.
Well,
So
and
I'm
that all
really
sounds like it's going well. So where's the problem?
here's the problem is that in anticipation of making sure that I continue to monitor what I'm doing, right, and be aware of that, how can I make sure that that okay, as I said, looking to like reduce medication works really really well for me, but also I don't want to be on meds and the doses that I'm in for a long period of time. That's just for personal reasons, you know what I'm saying? So
Okay.
I know, that being said, that means there's going to be a transition in my behavior and what I've been doing. So I like to be proactive and be preventative versus being reactionary.
Okay. And are you tracking, like, when you are working with your calendar or your planner, are you tracking how your day actually goes? Does your day always go the way you plan it to go?
No, of course not. No, of
Okay.
course not. No,
All
of course.
right. So actual time is something I would definitely recommend. Going back, and if you're using a Google Calendar, you can just go
Uh,
back and go, okay, my intention was to do this, but actually I ended up doing this for an hour and a half instead.
mhm.
And
Okay.
then that gives you a good snapshot of like the reality of your situation and how things are really going. Are you finding that you're struggling to like I heard all good things, but are you struggling to get anything done? Is there something that you're having a hard time fitting in?
I will tell you. So one of my challenges has always been writing.
Okay.
So like in terms of executive functioning, as you know, right, graphic organizers are helpful, but just me, the way I process, it takes me a longer time. Even like an email takes me long to craft it because I'm overthinking or making sure I have enough or not enough. And then when I have to craft something like write a project or create content or curriculum, it takes me a lot longer to do it. And then what ends up happening is I may procrastinate because it's not something I want to do. And the next thing I know, I'm in like panic mode. And then now my time is really messed up because instead of working on it, now I'm up later than I should be. And then it starts a cycle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially with things like that when they take a long time, our brain, the next time we go to do that thing is going, no, no, no. Last time you made me work on that till I was exhausted. So I'm going to do everything I'm going to throw everything at you I can to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So
Right.
writing for you, does that need to be like a a long period of time, or can you write in small chunks?
So what you said is what happens. If I write in small chunks, it's great, but for me to go back to it, it's like, oh, train of thought, right? Oh, like where was I?
Mm.
What typically happens is I get once I'm into something, the hyper focus begins, and I don't want to stop for fear that I'm in this flow and I'm not going to be able to
And you
get
won't
back
get
to
it again. Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that's just a little bit of like learning to trust yourself.
Okay.
Do you have a specific writing time like on a daily basis?
Um, like you mean that time of day that I do it, or how much I'm allotting myself to write?
I mean, kind of both. Like if there's a certain time of day that you're a better writer, I want you writing during that time.
Okay.
Or if you're just more productive or whatever during that time. But what I'm wondering is if we put writing on your calendar every day or 5 days a week or whatever for an hour, and you're leaving yourself good notes from where
Mm-hmm.
you left off so that
Mm-hmm.
you know how to get back into that because that is a problem for a lot of my clients and that's what you need to do. You need to leave yourself clues on what's going to happen next. Okay. Even if it's just, doesn't have to be anything perfectly crafted. Just like my next thought was that I would write something about this.
Okay.
And so leaving yourself clues, doing it a little bit every day. When you go to write, do you find yourself doing other things instead? Is that what your procrastination looks like?
Um, if Well, you know what it is that um, because I have so many ideas
Mhm.
and organizing them into like sequencing becomes a problem. So I have these ideas that are great nuggets, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, but that sounds great in this piece. And then if I put it with that, it'll go good. So
Yeah.
what ends up is that um, it almost looks like puzzle pieces, and
Okay.
it's insequential, um, but it is good work. So what happens is I'll work that way, and then I'll come back to it, and then I'll rearrange it into the sequential order that sounds good because I'll say it to myself, then I'll speak it out loud, and then it's kind of like I don't even know what a way to explain it, but that's the way that I write and I'll process things.
Okay.
Um,
And it sounds like that's working for you.
well, it I guess kind of what you said before, right? About the blocking out the time, keeping it, and then taking the notes. I don't usually take good notes to
Okay.
include and myself. So when that ends up happening is I'll remember I'm like, oh, I had this great idea, and I know I just did like 4 pages on it, or I have handwritten notes of like 2 pages, and I know it goes with this, but where the heck is it? And where did right? And what it which which Google Doc did I actually call it? Because this day I was thinking, oh, I'm going to call up my Google Doc for this particular thing, this. And then because I don't leave the clues, I go back and I call it something different the next day. Those
Okay.
that happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so, yes, doing that writing every day is going to help your brain trust you
Okay.
that you're not going to hyperfixate on this thing. And that's the other thing is like be secure with your stopping time. Be like secure is not the right word, but be deliberate with it, with your stopping time. Like when it's time to stop, it's time to stop. Like
Okay.
so you can trust yourself the next time. The other thing is if you're procrastinating, getting started, a very good way to do that is just to tell yourself, look, you only have to work on this for 10 minutes or whatever that is for you, where you're like, I can do that, no problem.
Okay.
Like what would that be for you? Like if you're really not wanting to work on a piece of writing, what would be like nothing for you to sit down and do?
5 minutes, ten
Okay.
minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's different for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to promise yourself, like you only have to do 5 minutes. And if you get started and you feel good about it, you can keep going when the 5 minutes is over. If you feel like it's absolute drudgery, then you can stop at the 5 minutes and then maybe give yourself another time later in the day where you do it again. We're
Okay.
just going to do 5 minutes. I tell that's one of my getting started things that I do with clients. So maximizing your time, how else does this need to happen?
Um, I just want to make sure that the time is quality and productive, and I guess understanding and being okay what that looks like for me, right?
Hmm.
So hold me helps me a lot, right? It's okay, Evan, if like you are only going to write 10 minutes per day, but that 10 minutes is okay. And if you feel like it, it's all right, but don't feel like I only go for 10 minutes a day and now I'm not productive. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's kind of the internal struggle that I have, knowing that,
Yeah.
oh, like once again, it's kind of like, wanting to be a high achiever and like want to be perfection, be a perfectionist, where the when the hyper focus comes in, like everything has to be right, and being okay to say, I guess giving myself permission to be okay with 5 minutes of writing per day is still considered productive.
Yeah. And tracking that actual time, just going back to that concept, allows you to look over your day and look and go, look at everything I got done.
Mm,
That's an important key too, is like reviewing your day and really patting yourself on the back for the things that you did. That's
okay.
huge. Another thing, concept that I wanted to bring up that we learned in coaching is B minus work. Perfectionists don't like to hear about it, but B minus work is doing something good enough instead of working on it extra until it's perfect. And like, what did they say? There's a saying about that, like done is better than perfect or something like that. But B minus work, I think in giving yourself like, this is how much time I'm going to work on this. And maybe even if it's like, you mentioned speaking, if you're writing a speech or something like that, I'm going to give myself a week to get this done. And then that's it. It has to be done at the week.
Mm,
And breaking that backwards, going, okay, how many hours of writing am I going to need to do in order to get this speech done? And working that into your calendar as well. What other productivity type things do you need?
um, I think I'm not a lot.
Okay.
I think managing the time so that then I don't have productivity issues. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Do you
Like so,
time how long things take? Like, do you know how long it takes to write a speech? Do you know how long it takes? We're harping on writing, but do you know how long it takes to do the things you do in a day?
no,
Okay.
no, I do not do a good job of monitoring and self-monitoring, even
Yeah.
though I should be doing it as self-management. I do not do a good job of self-monitoring, even though I know I should. And even what you were saying, like about understanding, okay, like Evan, you need to like track, like it's a time study, basically. You're
Mhm.
telling me. I know what
Yes.
a time.
Yeah, and I like these like oh it's a little bit blurry, but I like these visual timers. You've probably worked with students with them. Um and I like you can get them on Amazon, but they're super helpful. Like when you're going to start a task, just turn that timer on for however long you think the task is going to take.
Okay.
And then because you're tracking your time, you're going to go back and go, okay, actually, it took this long. And now you know, okay, it takes me this long to write a speech. It takes me this long to, for me, it was simple things like I would think, oh gosh, the dishes take forever. Like that was one of my things. The dishes take forever. Laundry takes forever. And because I was thinking that, we talked about like our thoughts create our feelings, which make us take or not take certain actions. And then we get the results we get. But because I was thinking it was taking forever, I would avoid doing the task. And then when I finally did do the task, it took forever. And so I proved myself right. Um, but just timing things, I found out that the dishes actually took 6 minutes. Like that's
Mm,
not forever. My brain was just lying to me. And I wonder with some of your tasks, timing them, there's also a law. I can't remember the name of the law off the top of my head, but it says that we will expand projects to the amount of time that we give them. And so if you give yourself 5 hours, for example, to write a speech, it's going to take 5 hours. If you give yourself 4 hours to write a speech, you're going to get it done in 4 hours. Like it's not always exactly that true,
okay.
but don't give yourself more time than you need for projects because then it will expand to that amount of time. And that could be for everything.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
All right. What else? We got a little bit more time.
Um, do you have any ideas about like organizational methods in terms of like organizing like tangible items, whether
Mm.
it's um, you know, whether it's like books or because I find myself I'm still very old school, and I still like sensory in terms of like paper and pencil or paper and pen, and I
Yeah.
what do you have any systems for organizing things like that, like notebooks and books and or
Yeah,
like
give me an example what's happening now. Like,
yeah.
are you just finding that they're everywhere? What's the problem?
and no matter what, if I say, okay, I'm going to make everything green today, right? And my green is going to be what I utilize for this particular thing. I never do it. It gets away, and then next thing you know, I'm just having stuff everywhere.
Mhm.
And like in terms of like notes and notebooks and books and those type of things.
Yeah, yeah. I would make sure that these things have a home.
Okay.
That's what I like to say. They have to have a home. And what you really want to work towards is if you have misplaced that thing, there are really only two places that that thing could be, because there are only two places that you live or that you put that thing, right? So if it's your books, for example, like where is their home? If you're taking them around the house to read them,
Um,
then maybe you're reading only in the same place all the time or something like that. What is like, is that the problem that they're getting kind of strung all over the house?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That with every item that you misplace, it should get to that point where there are only two places they should be. And that is a
Okay.
practice of you having to put things back where they go. And at first it seems ridiculous. You feel like a child, right? You're like, why do I have to clean up my space all the time? But as you do it more and more, and as you create homes for places, like this is the only place this thing goes. For example, my keys. Never lose my keys. Why? Because they're on the hook or they are in my purse, and there's no other place that they would be ever.
Mhm.
Um, Same with like my phone. My phone less so. It's kind of like with your books, it can get left places, but it's not getting like stuck down in the crack of the couch or, anything like that. But yeah, creating homes. Do you have ideas for like do your books not have a home? Are they just like stacked up on your desk or what?
Yeah, because as we talked before, like I have a great idea and I remember something and I pull the book out, but I don't put it
Mhm.
back. I'm like,
Okay.
but you know what I mean? Like once again, like under like beginning, I need to create clues so I know so that I'm just not leaving that book or that binder or whatever it is, like notebook somewhere because I think I'm
Mhm.
gonna go, but I don't go back to it for like weeks and I realize, oh, that's what I was looking for. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I would have like one central place where you're dumping all your ideas. I, for example, mine and you'll have your own method, whether it's just one single notebook that everything goes in, or if you want a digital system, like I love Trello. Some people love Notion, things like
Hmm.
that. Something searchable where you can dump ideas. I have a Trello board called Mandy's Brain, and that is where all of my fantastic ideas get dumped. And I have a list of like content creation ideas. And so having one central place where I call it offload, where you can offload these ideas. There was another thought I had for you, but I missed it. What else were we discussing?
I don't know, but something just came up.
Yeah, tell me.
Imagine me with ADHD not remembering, but so, but so this is something where it happens, and I think it goes back to what you're saying. It triggered me to remember about that having a space. Oftentimes, I feel myself doing double work because I'll take notes on something or write something, and
Mhm.
then transfer it electronically because I don't have a dumping space. So
Yeah.
right, like, I'm like, oh, let me just write this down, and then I'm like, okay, now I got to go back to this, put it on a Google Doc or something like that. So now I'm doing double entry, and now that's creating longer time for me to get something done than it should.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if it might be more efficient for you to just go digitally immediately,
Okay,
or and have something that like maybe you have it on your desktop and you have it on your phone and it's easily accessible that way.
the two,
What was that?
so it syncs between the laptop.
Yeah, for
Okay,
example, like I was talking about that Trello board, I have
yeah,
a little widget on my phone where I can go right into that Trello board and just put things on my phone. Or I can do that on the computer. But I will say you don't want to do it to excess. And maybe this would be like part of like a closing the end of your day kind of process. But I do the same thing. Like I will make little notes about things and then I just gather them all up and I digitize them. And for me, it's not a problem. It doesn't take a lot of time. But if it is a problem for you, then definitely just going immediately digital would be a good thing.
mhm.
You had a thought. Go ahead.
I do have a thought. I
Yeah.
think what it is that I don't have it as part of my day. right? I don't
Mm.
agenda of, this is how I'm going to close out my day, is transferring everything that I did by hand into digital.
And so you're trying
I
to like fit it in the cracks and then it,
I just do it randomly, and then what happens
yeah.
is I'm like, okay, now I got to do everything that I ever did, and then I'm back into that cycle instead of having
Yeah.
it as my daily schedule. That
Hmm.
would make, because then I'm not doing it all at once. I'm just doing it in increments, and it's like, chunking it like, together, so it comes together.
Yeah, and you triggered my thing that I lost earlier, which was, and you'll appreciate this being in education. I like to tell people to be like they're a kindergarten teacher. Like what do kindergarten teachers do? After we finish an activity, we what? We clean up. And
Uh,
so after you finish your workday, you're going to clean up your station. You're going to transfer your notes. You're going to check and see what you're going to be doing the next day. You're going to take care of, put things back where they need to go and take care of that. So it's a reset, basically.
are you familiar with the cleanup song?
I am, yes. I actually full-time subbed at kindergarten for almost a
Yeah.
year.
I just, as it, because that'll make me remember cleanup song, right?
Yeah.
Every that you're doing. Okay.
Yeah, love it. Okay, well, that is about our time. I hope you got some nuggets here. And I love you sharing your story. That's going to be helpful to other people. So I really appreciate you being on here, being vulnerable, being open. And I will let you know when this comes out.
All right. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye bye.